The First Amendment gives every American the right to freedom of assembly, but this right isn't guaranteed to everyone. Millions of people throughout the world have to deal with their governments cracking down on their protests, as it is not a right guaranteed by their constitutions. Here, what's happening in Israel and Palestine is a prime example of what's going on in the world today, and why we have it so lucky here in America. But I set out on a quest to find out why we have it so lucky. Here in America, our protests look a lot different. Time and again, protests have been used to invoke change in our society, and this has been used as a catalyst for change. Martin Luther King and Nelson Mandela both led civil disobedient protests against their oppressive governments at the time. This is a prime example of why protesting is so important, not only in America, but also abroad as well. Chris McCandless from Into the Wild also provides another example of how civil disobedience can inspire a movement of thousands. Recent shootings in Parkland, Santa Fe, and hundreds of other places have all provided America with a movement against guns. And I've heard plenty of times the story against guns, but I wanted to find a person who believed that guns were important to American culture. I went to a gun shop in my local Everett area, and I met this man in the parking lot. He made mention of why he loved guns. Feel about the anti-gun protests?
Fucking hate those people. They're fucking dipshits. Guns rule, man. Fuck yeah.
As I continued to interview this man, I discussed why he had such strong words for those who opposed gun reform, and he told me that it's his Second Amendment right. And when I questioned him about the protests and how they're important to American society, he simply told me protests are stupid and they shouldn't be used. As the interview continued, the man declined to be filmed any further. But as we had our conversation, we discussed about why protesting was so important. Eventually, I was able to discuss with him about why protesting, in my opinion, was so important, and he recognized the fact that protests are important, just not this one in particular. Eventually, I got around to asking him why protesting in America is so important to the country today, to which he responded, "America is a land of the people. Without protest, there is no way to hear the people directly, and I appreciate what's going on, but I don't appreciate the message that they're sending." As I continued along the interview process, I met a remarkable young woman who had attended hundreds of protests throughout her life. I wanted to get her opinion on why protests are American or not American for that matter, and here's what she had to say. How do you feel that protests have affected your life and have changed the way you see America?
Like our right to protest?
Yeah.
I think that our right to protest is one of the biggest tools that we have as a population, because a lot of other governments don't allow you to go out in public and disagree with them, dissent against them. And so I think that if we are going to actively make a change, then we need mass protest, and protest leads to revolution.
So in your opinion, as more of a left-leaning person, what have you seen in the anti-gun movement and the pro-gun movement that worries you or scares you?
I think the whole I have a strange opinion on the whole gun debate, and I think this giant lean of activism towards, banning guns is actually going to be detrimental in the long run. It's just really, really awful to see people treating children that way. There's sound effect in the background. Yeah, I'm sorry. It's hard for me to articulate this.
No worries. And last question, do you think America giving the right to protest, the right to assemble in the First Amendment, is that a fundamental of being an American, knowing that right?
I think so.
Hannah's opinions are most certainly interesting and valid, but I wanted to continue my research to find out why America is so unique in the way it works. As I continued my work, I tried to get more answers about why protesting is so special to America. I contacted my old math teacher, Patricia Fankhauser, and asked her a few questions about why she thinks protesting is so important. My first question for you is, do you think it was important for Jackson students to protest the school shootings that happened recently?
I think it was important for students to have the opportunity to participate in the protests, and just in practice their ability to stand up for what they believe in and to be active in promoting how they feel, and that makes sense.
After interviewing Mrs. Fankhauser, I decided to get the opinion of someone who had lived outside the U.S. for many years to see what protesting is like in other countries and why protesting may or may not be uniquely American. So here in America, we have the right to of freedom of assembly, which is really important to us. But I was wondering what it was like in Romania. Do you have any stories or anecdotes that you could provide that could show us what it's like to protest in a country that isn't America?
I could definitely recall my dad telling me stories of how he was beaten severely by cops, risked his life, and even gassed with tear gas before the fall of communism in Eastern Europe in 1989.
After finishing all of these interviews, I decided to ask myself the question, is protesting what makes being an American unique to being an American? I finished this thought process and I asked myself, what would it be like if I lived somewhere else? And ultimately, I came to the conclusion that having the right to protest here in America is one of the most important things we can do. And overall, we should use that right to our advantage. Thank you.